Hi, Jeremy Crow here. This week I wanted to discuss the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. So these two things go together quite often. It's a very big trend right now in nutrition, diet, even cognitive enhancement. They talk about this a lot. Um, it's not really new though. It's just kind of rediscovered or reutilized. So in the past, humans have lived like this, as their natural state for, most of the time that humans have been alive. Um, but since agriculture and a couple other things like that, the diet has changed that we have now quite considerably. And our modern diet in the developed world, with all these processed foods, massive amounts of grains and carbohydrates, it's just we've gotten really far away from that traditional diet. Now, I'm not saying that the traditional diet was good for us necessarily. It's what we adapted to. So over literally hundreds of thousands of years, um, the human species has had evolutionary pressure applied to it in order to be able to survive feast and famine, alternating feast and famine. So, what I mean by that is we wouldn't just eat 3 meals a day with two or three snacks, throughout the day. We would eat when food was available, and we would usually eat large amounts of it, and then we would store the excess energy that we didn't use that day as fat. And then when we had to go without food for periods of time because it simply wasn't available, then we would have those fat reserves to draw upon for energy. So our bodies would then burn that fat in the fat stores and use that as our primary source to get us through the famine phase of the feast and famine. Uh, now, the people that were able to do that more effectively or more efficiently were the ones that were more likely to pass their genes on to the next generation. And that's what I'm talking about when I say evolutionary pressure has been applied to the human species for that to happen. So now what we've been doing is we've been living in such a way where we don't go through these famine phases. Not very often. Most people don't experience true hunger very often anymore. So usually most people don't tend to go through an entire day or two where they're not really eating any food, or they've barely gotten any food, or they've eaten zero food at all. Maybe they've just drank water for like 2 days. That is very uncommon in the developed world. You know, um, and that's why you have an obesity epidemic. So that's why we have so many people that we're storing food because we're getting surplus of food, and we'll eat it because our instinct, our natural instinct that's been bred into us is when there's food, we feast. We and then we store the excess energy. We've been doing that, but that's all we're doing because we never go into that famine mode. And so that's why we have such an epidemic of obesity. So intermittent fasting addresses this issue. So there are a lot of benefits, health benefits of intermittent fasting beyond that go just beyond the fat burning. Like most people who utilize intermittent fasting will say that when they're on a fast, they will often have what they perceive to be enhanced cognitive function. So their mind works better. So their mind is sharper. They're more focused, and that's kind of a survival mechanism that the people that did get enhanced cognitive abilities when they were lacking food, those were the people that were more likely to get food, to be able to hunt properly, or to gather properly, and find what they needed to eat, to obtain these resources better, because they've got their mind is working on another level. And of course, these people who were able to procure food when they were in a fasting state, these people were more likely to survive, and therefore more likely to pass on their genes, etc., etc. So, what we've done is that we've rediscovered this kind of lost function of the body, in a sense, and are consciously engaging with this function of the body in order to achieve the various body composition goals that we have. So if you want to lose weight, you know that you have to get yourself into this famine phase long enough for you to get into that, what they call ketosis, a state of ketosis. And what this means is that you have ketones present in your body. Now, what is a ketone? Ketone bodies are compounds or molecules that our body produces in the liver. There's three primary endogenous, meaning produced within the body, endogenous ketones. And these are acetoacetate, beta hydroxybutyrate, and acetone. Now, one simple way you can test to see whether or not you are in a ketosis is your breath. So when you breathe out, some of these ketones will actually be present in your breath, the acetone in particular. And people can kind of smell, you can kind of smell it. It has a slightly fruity scent to it, and it kind of smells a bit like nail polish remover, because often nail polish remover actually has acetone in it, or similar compounds. Don't drink it. Don't drink it. Yeah, that's not good for you. But so that's one way. You can also test with, you can get strips that are kind of like pH strips that you will actually pee on. You'll urinate on it, and the strip will turn pink or red if ketones are present. I can't remember which one that comes through in the urine. I think it might be acetoacetate. Not sure. But the other third main method of detecting whether or not you're in a state of ketosis is blood test. So this is almost the same thing as what you'll see people who have diabetes or other blood sugar disorders. They will do a blood sugar test with these testing strips that they prick their finger, and then they put a drop of blood on the testing strip, and it goes in the machine, and it'll give them their blood glucose level. And you can do the same kind of thing with a ketone blood detector, and it'll tell you the level of blood ketones that it detects. And so that's another way you can determine. Ketone bodies, what do? So these ketone bodies actually are used as fuel. So normally the body will use glucose as fuel, which is derived from carbohydrates of any kind of carbohydrate, essentially, except for dietary fiber, gets converted in the system into glucose. So you can tell what the net carbs are in an item by just taking the total carbs and subtracting the dietary fiber from that number, and that's how many grams of carbs you have, or how many grams of net carbs you have. So normally we run off of glucose. Glucose in the system gets converted into glycogen, which is stored in the liver and the muscles, and that's like a very immediate source. So most of the time, anytime you're using your muscles, anytime you're using your body at all, which is all the time, most of the time most people are running off of glucose and its product glycogen, which is stored in the muscles, I said. But if you don't give your body glucose, if you don't eat carbs, then, or even if you're fasting, or if you're eating a ketogenic diet, which essentially is a very low carb, moderate protein, and high fat diet, then you're essentially starving your body of carbs, or you can do it through fasting. So that's basically just not taking in any food. You still would take in water. There are certain fluids and liquids that you can take that shouldn't knock you out of ketosis. Now, so either ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting, or the two in combination, will starve the body of carbohydrates, starves the body of glucose, and all of the glycogen eventually gets depleted. You can deplete the glycogen in your body quicker by exercising. So one popular form of exercising while doing intermittent fasting or ketogenic diet to maximize fat burning would be like high intensity interval training, for example. But any kind of exercise will help use up the glycogen, and once all that is used up, just living will do it, but you can make it happen faster if you exercise as well. But you got to be careful, because you don't want your blood sugar to drop too low too quickly, because you can end up fainting and things like that. So you have to be very gentle with yourself, and take this one step at a time. Just do a little bit here and there, and eventually work up to a full-on, practice. Be gentle with yourself at first, because your body actually has to learn to adapt. I mean, if, say, you're 35 years old and you've never experienced more than a few hours of hunger, for most of your life, maybe an exceptional day or two here and there on a very blue moon, not maybe years go by before you have an entire day where you didn't eat, then chances are your body is not fat adapted or not keto adapted at all. So you are addicted to sugar, essentially. Your body doesn't even barely know how to operate off of ketone bodies. It pretty much has always been using carbohydrates, glucose, as its fuel source. So it's going to take a bit of time for it to learn how to properly utilize those ketone bodies as an energy source. So as I said, just be very gentle with yourself in the process. So how do you do this? So what you'll do, there's a progression that you should probably do. We'll start with intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, typically the first thing you do is to get yourself on eating pattern. So intermittent fasting is not technically a diet. It's a pattern of eating. You're not talking about, when you're talking about intermittent fasting, you're not talking about how many calories you're taking in, or what foods you're taking in or anything like that. It's just a pattern of eating. So the first step is just eat 3 meals a day and don't snack in between meals. So I've been doing that for a while, where I don't really snack. I'll just have my 3 meals a day, and there's no snacking. You just make sure you eat enough during those 3 meals that you won't end up being overly hungry in between the meals. One of the things you can do to help decrease the amount of hunger that you might feel is increase the fat content of your diet. So that usually produces a longer period of time that you can go before you start feeling hunger. Another thing you can do is drink coffee or tea. Now, you don't want to put sugar in this. You can put like an artificial sweetener in it, like probably the 2 best would be stevia or xylitol. So stevia is a natural one. Xylitol is more chemically, but both of them are pretty safe to use. I personally prefer stevia. The first time I tried it, I was a bit surprised, and I was like, oh, what the heck is this? But it was because I was expecting it to just be sweet without a flavor. So stevia actually has a flavor to it. Although you can get stevia products that are not pure stevia, but are mainly stevia, that have less of that stevia flavor to it. But, I find that once I, wasn't caught off guard by it, I actually like the taste of stevia. There's these sodas that I get that I'll have once in a while that are called Zevia. That's the brand name. And the main sweetener in that is stevia, and that's where they get the name, of course. But they've got some really good flavors. They've got like a ginger root beer, and they've got a black cherry. Those are my 2 favorite flavors of that Zevia soda. Zevia soda. So don't put any sugar or honey or any of that kind of thing in your coffee or tea, but you could put like zero carb artificial sweeteners or alternate sweeteners like stevia or xylitol if you really need to have that sweetness. Although it can trick the brain a little bit into thinking that it's getting something sweet, and it can increase your level of cravings sometimes. So really try not to have too much artificial sweetener when you're fasting, because it can lead to you having strong cravings later, which might be very difficult to resist. But I find that you got to figure it out for yourself. It's a balancing act. But yeah, the caffeine in coffee or tea actually will help reduce your appetite. So that's something you can do. I mean, I'm talking about, the main goal here that I'm talking about is cutting weight. And belly weight in particular is one of the things that this will really get at. So you start with 3 meals a day, no snacking in between. I don't find it very difficult, but I've been doing it for a long time. The next step is to go to a pattern where you have your 3 meals, but they are all done within an 8-hour period of time in a day. So you have an 8-hour eating block where you'll have your 3 individual meals, no snacking in between. And that's just during 8 hours. And then the other 16 hours of the day, you will fast. You will just drink water. You might want to take in some electrolytes, but I'm not talking about sugar here. I'm talking about like sodium, magnesium, and potassium. these things are something that you're going to want to try and make sure that you don't lose too much of, because when you're in ketosis, you tend to pee out your your electrolytes at a much greater rate than when you're not in ketosis. So that's something you got to be aware of. Up your sodium, up your magnesium, and up your potassium intake. And you can get like you can get things like half salt. I think there's certain lower sodium salt substitutes out there that have a lot of potassium in there. They have potassium salts to replace the sodium salts. But you need more sodium anyways. So I'm just saying to add. That's one product you can add to increase your potassium. Potassium is notoriously difficult to get enough in a day already. I think you need something like 4.7 or like grams of it, or 4,700 milligrams of potassium. And a banana has like maybe like 300, I think. But anyway, you need like to eat like a dozen bananas or something crazy like that to get enough potassium in your diet. And bananas, aren't really the best source of potassium. For one thing, they've got a ton of carbs in them, a lot of fructose, a lot of simple carbs that get converted into sugar really quickly in the body, and you'll spike your blood sugar, especially if you eat a dozen of them. I mean, come on. Now, another thing you can eat, though, is avocado. Avocado is high in fat, low in carbs. So that's something that you can eat, and it's ketogenic. Now, you're not going to be eating anything on a fast, so you're going to need to have some sort of drink that has these electrolytes in it, or just make sure that you get enough of it when you have your meals during your 8-hour feeding block of time. So yeah, during those 16 hours where you're not eating, you're just having water and maybe some tea that doesn't have any sugar, you're gonna deplete your glycogen levels, and then your liver is gonna start burning fatty acids from your fat, obviously, and converting them into ketone bodies, which your body will use as fuel. So you'll be burning fat during those 16 hours. Not right away. First, your body has to deplete its sugar and glycogen before that happens. So, as I said, you can exercise to make that faster. Now, the next step is to have 2 meals a day, and you're going to want to do this in like basically like a 4-hour eating block. So you'll have 4 hours where you'll be eating during those 4 hours only. And you'll have basically 2 large meals during those 4 hours. And then for 20 hours, you will just fast. Now, you will experience hunger. That is something that you're just going to have to deal with. Now, it doesn't last forever. When you do get the hunger, just ride it out. Have some extra water, maybe certain types of broth actually can be very satisfying. It'll help you get some of your like sodium, for example, the extra sodium that you'll need, but the calories are so low, you just got to make sure they get the very, very low calorie broth, and that shouldn't, if you get the right broth, it shouldn't knock you out of ketosis during your fast. It should just be like a liquid, but it can be very gratifying or help you get through that hunger. But it does go away. The hunger does go away once you put up with it for a little bit, and then you're fine. So when you do eat, now that's when you're going to want to eat the ketogenic diet. So you don't just eat whatever. You don't just gorge yourself on pastries or have a giant plate of lasagna or whatever, right? You're going to want to eat ketogenically. So that means, like I said, very low carb, moderate protein, and high fat. So you're probably going to want about like 5% of your calories coming from carbs, and about and those carbs are generally going to be coming from vegetables. So the easiest way to do a ketogenic diet is to take whatever was going to normally be your carb portion from a regular meal that you would normally eat, take that away and replace it with whatever the veggies you're going to have. Just have extra veggies and take away the carb portion. So take away the pasta, take away the rice, take away the potatoes, and put vegetables in there. And you're going to want to look up which vegetables have a very low glycemic load. Glycemic load is more important than glycemic index, let's just say. Glycemic load is the actual impact on your blood sugar and insulin response. So the glycemic load is the effective. That's really the more important value to look up. And so look up low glycemic load vegetables. Asparagus is one. Cauliflower is another one. Cruciferous vegetables. Eat a lot of salad. So now, one of the things that's really good to do on the ketogenic, when you're eating ketogenically, is to eat very large salads. This will help you get your potassium and other nutrients. Like, even eat like up to like 7 cups of salad. And one of the things I like is like a kale or a cruciferous slaw, you could call it. So this would have like shredded cabbage, shredded Brussels sprouts, kale, these cruciferous vegetables, shredded up raw, and you put them in there, and you can put some oily dressing. Just don't put sweet dressing. Like, you don't want a sugary dressing, because obviously the sugars are carbs. So, but you can have an oily dressing on it, and that will be something that can help sustain you. It'll help nourish you, and it gives you the dietary fiber that you need. A lot of people, they skimp on the vegetables. They'll just eat like a lot of fatty meats, and that's not how you do the ketogenic diet properly. You're going to end up getting constipated, which is going to cause bloating, and all kinds of other problems. So you need to have lots of vegetables. Lots of vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are particularly good. Asparagus is particularly good because it has certain compounds in it that also help benefit your process. And you can keep this up. If you have a cheat day where you gorge yourself on carbs, it's going to take you a while before you can get back into ketosis. So, generally, there's two schools of thought on this, where they'll say, well, you have one cheat day a week and just eat whatever you want, because you're gonna binge at some point anyways. You're gonna crack, so might as well schedule it once a week and that's it. And also because it helps keep your metabolism guessing, so you don't adapt to your low carb, fat burning ketosis state and start to plateau if you have that day of gorging per week. Other people say if you do have a cheat day or even a cheat meal, even if it's just once a week, it's going to take you days to get back into ketosis. I mean, sometimes if you're not fat adapted, or you're not, keto adapted, is probably a better term. If you're not keto adapted, meaning you haven't really been in keto that much, it's going to take you a lot longer to get into that state of ketosis than once you are adapted. So, especially when you're beginning, you're going to want to stick it out and don't have those cheat days. Later on, once your body does adapt, and this can take even up to a month of being on ketosis and doing intermittent fasts, before your body actually fully adapts to being in ketosis. And once you do get fat adapted or keto adapted, then you could do the occasional cheat meal, but try not, but maybe once a month, is a little bit more realistic to have a cheat day once a month, because it does take so much longer to get back into ketosis, especially as you are starting. But yeah, like as you get better at it, or as you've been doing it for a longer period of time, your body's more used to it, you're going to be able to get back into that state of ketosis quicker when you get knocked out of it. And so you can afford to have a cheat meal or cheat day a little more often than if you're just starting out. So that's basically what it is. You're taking a function of the body, or functions of the body, that were adapted to long-term survival of the species, and you're kind of repurposing them to achieve your body recomposition goals of fat burning mainly. Now, most of the time when you're doing fat burning, when you're losing fat, most of the time you're going to lose a bit of muscle as well. If you work out and do like resistance training, weight training, body weight exercise type stuff too, but if you're doing resistance training, that will help slow down the breakdown of your muscle tissue when you're dieting, or when you're burning fat. But now, if you're burning fat because you're in ketosis, though, that's another matter. Sometimes you will still lose a bit of muscle, but you're way less likely to lose muscle if you're burning fat because you're doing ketosis. Because you're providing your body with protein and with fuel. It's just not the type of fuel that it's used to. So the more fat adapted or the more keto adapted you are, the easier it'll be to lose fat without losing muscle as well. So it's a lifestyle choice. It's very trendy right now. That's essentially how you do it. I don't know whether it's beneficial long term or not. It seems to be. It does seem to have some health benefits, especially for people who have diabetes. It has some potential. There's some promising research that's being done that says that it may help with cancer. Most people, pretty much everybody, has cancerous cells in their body. About 40% will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life. And out of those 40%, roughly about 20% of those, 1 in 5 of those people who do get diagnosed with cancer will succumb to it. They'll die from cancer. Those are pretty startling statistics. Now, ketosis may be one way to reduce the size of tumors or prevent tumors in the first place, because the primary fuel source of cancer cells is glucose. Also, the thing is, the natural cell death called apoptosis is is turned off in cancer cells. They're essentially immortal cells. But if you're in a ketosis state, it helps turn that apoptosis back on, and then the cancer cells will start to die. So at least that's what the current research is indicating could be the case. So I don't want to make claims that ketosis cures cancer when people are getting sued left, right, and center for saying things like that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I'm just sharing with you some information that I've learned about things, and do your own research to determine whether this is something that you want to try out. Consult your doctor, especially if you're on medications, especially if you're on insulin, because the thing is, your need for insulin generally goes down. Your need reduces considerably. So that can be an issue, because if you need less insulin when you're doing ketosis or intermittent fasting, if you're injecting or taking orally insulin, you're going to have too much insulin in your body, and you're going to reduce your blood sugar too much. You're going to end up having hypoglycemia or something, right? It's not good. It's not good if you do that. So definitely, especially if you're on medications, if you're on heart medications, blood pressure medications, or insulin, these are particularly important to let your doctor know about what's going on, what you're trying. Make sure that you have a doctor that actually knows what the heck ketosis is and how it affects the body, because some doctors know nothing about nutrition, and they'll give you all kinds of bad advice about nutrition, if they'll even give you any advice at all. So anyways, that's what ketosis is, that's what intermittent fasting is, and that's generally how to do it. It's very trendy right now, but it is something that all humans basically have in them, and we can harness that function. And that's why some people call it, what do they call it? Something, biohacking. Essentially, they're talking about finding functions of the body and repurposing them for their own ends, or for their own purposes. And that's it. That's what I got for you. I hope you liked it. If you like this video, if you want to hear more of these types of videos, then definitely hit subscribe or follow me on my channel here. And yeah, see you next week.